Hello. In this video we're going to go through a student's piece of work and we're going to kind of make some corrections and highlight some good points in this. So for those of you that are just kind of tuning into this, this program simulates the purchase of tickets and food at a movie theater. Now there's a lot of more convenient ways to do this, but part of what we're trying to, what we're trying to develop here is we're trying to get an understanding of what are called conditional statements. That is, if statements, in this case specifically. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm going to go through this line by line and do a first kind of general look. So the first thing I notice here is we have this name of this class. Remember, the name of a class is the name of the program. A program in computer science is called a class. And the first thing I notice is exercise. It's spelled wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. It's 3, and remember, subsequent words should be capitalized. So we're going to call this exercise 3 movie. Now you'll notice I get an error here, and that's because I've renamed the class, but the file has the previous name. So if we come over here, we just have to tell it to rename the compilation unit. Because remember, there's a file somewhere on your computer, and if this name doesn't match the file name, there's an error. So we take a look at this and we have our scanner object. Remember, this is our tool we use for taking inputs. So scanner is our tool for taking inputs. And then what we have is our variables and constants. Now I would suggest here to put all your variables together and to put all your constants together. And then what we're going to do, so these are variables here, so I'm going to take them and I'm going to bring them up into that section here. And now I'm going to add some descriptors to them. So if I come over here to the end of this line, this stores the user's age. This stores, I'm not sure what yet, but we'll take a look and figure it out as we go through. So we'll come back up here and add the names of these, or descriptions of these variables as we go. The first thing I notice here is this one has a warning, and you see the warning is the variable isn't used. So this variable is here, but it's never actually used. So let's actually remove this right now. Now it's gone. Then we have our constants, and one of the ideas from this exercise is that when we have some constant value, a value that never changes in the program, we want to declare that constant in the top. And the reason for doing this is because we can use this constant multiple times in the program, and if for some reason as a designer I need to make a change, i.e. the price goes from $5.50 to $6.50, I only have to make the change here, and that change will be reflected through the entire program. Let's put 5 again there. So we have our input, so here we take the input, take the user's input. Okay? So again, I'm just going to go through here and comment and kind of add some corrections, little corrections, and then we'll go through a larger kind of analysis of this. So this is our conditional logic to find cost of ticket. So notice what I was talking about earlier, this idea of the constant. So here is an output to the screen. So we say if the age of the user is less than 12. So if I input, say, my age is 11, it's going to enter this section here. This is the end of the if. So inside of here we have what is called a conditional code block. A code block is a section of code that does a specific thing. And what's really important here is that we indent this in. So the I naturally follows in and then comes out again. So we can see we print you are a child and your ticket cost is cost child. And then we add to this variable total the cost child. Now, one of the rules we developed early in this course is that all variables need to be declared at the top. So the problem that this student is having here, and if we scroll down you'll see they've declared total each time. The problem the student is having here is that because they're declaring total in this area, it means it's not accessible later on. And this has to do with a larger idea called scope. And again, we don't talk about this idea of scope, but this is why I try and encourage you to declare all variables at the top. A scope of a variable is where is the variable visible. So because you've declared the variable here, it's only visible from the brace prior to it to the end of that brace. So this variable is only visible inside this if statement. So that's why down here you've had to redeclare it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this here, and I'm going to delete this here. And of course now I get an error that this variable doesn't exist. And I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to declare a variable called total, and initially the total cost is 0. This stores the total cost of the visit. Okay. So now we've added the total is the cost of a child, but this plus 0 doesn't have an effect, so I'm just going to remove it. I'm just going to say total is cost child. So what we do is we take the cost of a child ticket and then we put it into total. Come down here, total is cost adult. Let's make that same correction, and let's make that same correction down here. There we go. So if we just pull this up, so this is the end of the else if. Age is greater than 64. And this is the end of the else if. This is age is greater than 65. The other one, age is less than 64. Pardon me. Okay, so now this should work here, which is nice. So remember that idea I talked about indenting. So inside the if statement, it kind of flows in. So we have our if statement. So if this statement is true, we execute this code block. If it's false, we check this condition, and then if this is true, we execute this code block. If this is false, we check this condition here. If it's true, we execute this code block. And if they all fail, then we just don't go into any of the code blocks. The benefit of using this if-else-if structure is that if this condition is true, the program knows to skip all the else-ifs. It doesn't bother checking. It just kind of says, oh, this is true. It runs through this code block and then jumps all the way to the bottom. So remember I talked about the idea of indenting. So now that we're out of the if statements, we want to bring this back in line. So we want to bring all this back. And again, this is purely a form issue, a setup, but this becomes really important as we get into larger, more complicated programs. So very nice here. Again, we have a couple little just setup. Now I would probably take nothing, and I would put nothing after the popcorn, right? Just in terms of the way a menu might be set up. So we're going to take nothing, and we'll bring nothing down here. So if I run this, it's going to say tonight's menu, and you have combo A. And let's just set this up for a degree of consistency. There we go. And then which combo would you like? And then we take an input. So this prints out menu. And this takes input from user. So we have this response variable here. So we see the response is taking the input that the user decides with regards to a menu. So let's come up here and we take a look. Here's my variable response. This stores the response for the menu option. Okay? So let's come down here. So let's see what we have here. So we have if cost. So again, see the same problem here? We have total, but we've already declared total. We're going to say total here. So total, let's actually start here. Let's look at our if statement. So a problem that's happened here is response is a string. And we haven't actually talked about comparing strings. What we encourage you to do in this case is to either do your combo options as 1, 2, 3, 4 as integers, or to use characters. But a lot of students want to use strings, and that's okay. But the problem is response is a string, and strings can't be compared like integers or characters. We need to use built-in methods. Okay, so we haven't actually studied these yet, but a lot of students are playing with them. And it's right here. So what we've done is the student said the string that we stored the response, so it says, would you like a combo? What combo would you like? And then we take an input from the user, and notice we put that input into the variable response. So the user says yes, or sorry, would you like a which combo would you like? The user puts an A, and that A gets stored in response. So I'm not checking ants, I'm checking response. I'm checking response. So what we're doing is we're taking whatever word is in the variable response, and we're checking if it's equal to the letter A. And this statement here will generate either true or false. So I like to suggest to students when we're first learning to say, so what we're saying now is, if the response equals A, so if this is true, so that means the users put A, we're going to then calculate the cost for combo 1, which is popcorn and pop. So what I think the student's trying to do here is they're trying to take the cost that the users already incurred from the purchasing of the ticket based on your age. So this is where we need a self-referencing assignment statement. So total keeps track of the cost of the visit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say total equals total plus 1180. So we might do something like system.out.println. You have chosen option A for a cost of, now I could put here $11.80, but we want to use that same idea with constants that we used earlier. So since $11.80 is the cost of a combo, what I want to do here is I'm going to actually make a constant called combo A cost. Combo A cost. So what this means now is I can come up to the top where my constants are, and I'm going to say final double combo A cost. And I think we said it was $11.80. Then we're going to make another one because we have 3 combos. Combo B cost. Let's say combo B is $7. I don't know what the actual assignment says off the top of my head. $9.50, whatever it might be. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to come down here, and it's exactly the same way. We're going to say if the user chooses A, or, and this means or, the user chooses small a, we're going to say you've chosen combo 1. Well, else if, so we're going to check if response equals B. Or now the temptation here for a lot of people is to cut and paste because we're actually typing the same thing over and over again. But my recommendation is actually type this out. The process of typing this out a couple times will not only increase your typing abilities, but it will help you internalize these commands. And that's might not be for everyone, but that's something I've noticed from working with a lot of students and myself. I find typing these things out helps me remember what they are. So we have else if response equals D, so what I'm going to do now is if they choose B, I'm going to system.out.println. You have chosen option B for a cost of, put our $sign plus combo B cost. Total equals total plus combo B cost. So again, what I'm doing is I'm taking the total that's already been calculated based on the user's age, and I'm adding to it the cost of a combo. So it's kind of like if you're talking to the person, the sales representative at the movie theater, and they say, okay, you're a child, so you owe me, say, $5, and then you say I would like option B, and then so that the math they'll do in their head is, okay, so $5 plus the cost of the food that you want to purchase. Total plus combo C cost, and again we need that same system.out.println. You have chosen option C for a cost of, put our dollar symbol, combo cost, combo C cost. Okay, and if they choose nothing, we'd say something like system.out.println. You have chosen no food. It's important that we actually prompt the user so they know this, because if we don't, the user might be confused, because you always want to prompt to give feedback to the user to what their choice has been. Now, we can see here, I want the user to input A, B, C, or D, and we have accounted for the case that user inputs A, this is what happens if they input B, this is what happens if they input C, and this is what happens if they input D. What happens if they input something that isn't one of those? Well, we can catch all of those cases by including an else statement. So essentially we check if this fails, else if this fails, else if this fails, else if, and if this fails, if everything fails, we're always going to do this. And in this case, we are only going to get here if we say, you have chosen an invalid option. And of course, students often now say, well, how do I go back and ask again what they want? And we haven't learned a structure called loops. So right now, we don't have the knowledge yet to go back and ask the question again. But that is an excellent next step. So let's just scroll up here. So what I see here, so you see how this is my end of my main? I want to actually pull this bracket back so that this code above it is indented. So this is important. So you see how this is my main header, and then it indents in, and this is all the code that's inside my main. This would be called my main code block. That's the end of my main. This is the end of my class, the end of my program. So there's two more things that have to happen. So the next step, you're going to take an input if the user has a coupon or not. And then you're going to say something like, if the user has a coupon, then total equals total minus 4. Because I think the assignment says you have a $4 discount. Then what you have to do, or let's just set it up like this. Step 1, then step 2 now you have to do is calculate the tax. And then step 3 is you have to have some final output to the user. Okay? So we just come up to the top and let's do one more read through. So right here I see the first thing I notice is that this variable cost isn't used, so I'm going to get rid of that, and this variable answer isn't used, so I'm going to get rid of that. My variables are grouped together, my constants are grouped together, my variables are labeled. My constants could be labeled as well, so stores, child cost, stores, adult cost. However, the names are pretty descriptive here, so it's almost a little redundant to do that, so we don't need to in this case. Remember, constants are always capitalized, and that's just good form. It helps us as programmers identify something that's important. We take our input for our age, and then based on the age, we figure out what the cost of the actual ticket is. And the key thing here is that we have to check what their age is in order to decide how much they're charged, and that's done using a grouping of if and else if statements. Else ifs have to be connected to an if statement. So this else if and this else if are connected to this if statement up here. So if this statement fails, then we check this one. If this statement fails, then we check this one. If this statement is true, the nice thing about the else if is we jump all the way to the end. Okay? So then we have our menu that comes out. Then we prompt the user for an input. And then we do again the conditional logic to add the cost. Oh, I should spell coupon, right? So I hope this video helped. I'd love it if you tried this next step. And if anyone, of course, has questions or comments or concerns, please send me an email and attach your code, and I'll go through and debug it, and we can all learn from that. Hope you have a great day.